The message arrived on a Tuesday morning. Glowing softly on the communication console of the human diplomatic vessel Terra Prime, Ambassador Taman was drinking his second cup of coffee when the priority alert chimed through the ship's speakers. "Ambassador, we have an incoming transmission from the Galactic Council," announced Lieutenant Minho from the bridge. "It's marked as urgent diplomatic correspondence." Taman set down his cup and walked to the main console. The holographic display flickered to life, showing the familiar symbol of the Galactic Council, a circle of stars representing the 47 member species. The message began to play in the Universal Translator's smooth voice. "Greetings to all member species," the recording began. "The Galactic Council is pleased to announce the first interspecies youth cultural exchange. This historic gathering will take place aboard Harmony Prime Station in 60 Earth days." Taman leaned forward, interested. The Council rarely organized events specifically for young beings. Most diplomatic functions were strictly adult affairs, full of formal protocols and careful negotiations. The message continued. "We invite each member species to send 2 youth representatives, aged between 8 and 12 in standard human years. These young ambassadors will participate in cultural sharing activities designed to promote understanding between our diverse civilizations." The hologram shifted to show images of Harmony Prime Station. The massive structure floated in neutral space, its biodomes and atmospheric processors capable of supporting dozens of different life forms simultaneously. Taman had visited the station several times for council meetings, but he had never seen it configured for such a large gathering. "Each delegation is requested to bring something safe that represents your species' relationship with nature," the voice explained. "This should be a living example that demonstrates how your people interact with the natural world around them. Please ensure all specimens are completely harmless and appropriate for interaction with youth from other species." The word "safe" was emphasized clearly in the transmission. Taman noticed that the translator repeated it 3 times throughout the message, each time with additional stress. Obviously, the Council was being very careful about potential dangers. "All safety protocols must be strictly followed," the message added. "We want this to be a peaceful and educational experience for all participants. No creature brought to the exchange should pose any risk to attendees from other species." The transmission ended with coordinates for Harmony Prime and detailed instructions for arrival procedures. Taman saved the message and called for his aide. "Bora, please send word to Earth Command," he instructed. "We need to discuss potential candidates for this youth exchange program." Within hours, recommendations began arriving from Earth. The selection committee had narrowed the choices to several promising candidates, but 2 names stood out immediately. Nari Kim, age 10, daughter of Dr. Soman and Ambassador Taman himself. The girl was bright, curious, and had shown remarkable ability with languages during her time aboard diplomatic vessels. The second candidate was Jiho Park, age 11, whose guardian Captain Hayek commanded one of Earth's patrol ships near the outer colonies. The boy was known for his quick thinking and natural leadership abilities among the children in the diplomatic community. Both children had grown up around aliens and interstellar travel. They were comfortable with different species and had the kind of open-minded curiosity that would serve them well as representatives of humanity. Dr. Soman reviewed the candidates' files with her husband that evening. "Nari would love this opportunity," she said, scrolling through the requirements. "She's been asking when she can attend a real diplomatic function." "The timing works well too," Taman agreed. "She's on school break, and this kind of experience would be invaluable for her education." They contacted Captain Hayek to discuss Jiho's participation. The gruff military officer was initially hesitant about sending his ward to a gathering of alien youth, but Jiho's enthusiasm convinced him. "Please, Uncle Hayek," Jiho pleaded over the video call. "I've studied 17 different alien cultures this year. This is my chance to actually meet kids from other worlds." The preparations began immediately. Both children would need special diplomatic credentials and updated medical clearances for extended exposure to alien environments. The ship's educational AI created customized learning programs about the species they would likely encounter. Nari spent hours studying the cultural files. She learned about the crystalline Villani, who communicated through harmonic vibrations and grew beautiful mineral formations. The aquatic Marin fascinated her with their underwater cities and bioluminescent art forms. The insectoid Cathara had complex hive societies and created intricate geometric patterns. Jiho focused on the more technical aspects, studying the station's layout and life support systems. He wanted to understand how Harmony Prime could accommodate so many different atmospheric and environmental needs simultaneously. As the departure date approached, the question of what to bring became more important. The Council's instructions were clear, something safe that showed humanity's relationship with nature. The obvious choices seemed to be plants or perhaps small harmless animals. What about flowers from the earth gardens? Suggested Dr. Soman. We could bring samples of roses or daisies. Or maybe a small dog, added Captain Hyok during one planning session. Dogs are friendly and show how humans bond with animals. But the children had different ideas brewing in their minds. They had spent the previous summer at the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center, where Dr. Soman volunteered her veterinary skills. During those months, they had helped care for dozens of orphaned and injured animals. "Mom," Nari said one evening, "what counts as safe exactly?" Dr. Soman looked up from her research tablet. "Something that won't hurt anyone, obviously. Something gentle and harmless. But what if it's only harmless because we know how to take care of it properly?" Nari asked with the kind of logic that made adults pause and think. The question hung in the air as the Terra Prime continued its journey toward the rendezvous point with other human vessels. Soon, the small diplomatic fleet would head to Harmony Prime Station, carrying Earth's young representatives to their first major interspecies gathering. Neither Taman nor Dr. Soman realized that their daughter and young Jiho were already planning something that would challenge every assumption the Galactic Council had about human children and their definition of safe companions. The stage was set for a cultural exchange that would become legendary throughout the galaxy, though not quite in the way the Council had originally envisioned. 3 weeks before the departure date, Nari and Jiho sat in the Terra Prime's observation lounge, watching stars drift past the viewport. Both children had their study tablets open, but neither was paying attention to their lessons about alien customs. "We need to think about what to bring," Nari said, tapping her stylus against the table. "Everyone will be watching us represent all of humanity." Jiho nodded seriously. At 11, he took his responsibilities very seriously. The Council message said something safe that shows our relationship with nature. "That's pretty broad." Dad suggested houseplants. Nari made a face. "Can you imagine?" "Hi everyone, these are flowers. They smell nice and look pretty. That's how humans interact with nature." "Uncle Hyuk thinks we should bring a trained dog," Jiho added. "He says dogs show loyalty and friendship." Both children sat quietly for a moment, considering these adult suggestions. They were practical and certainly safe, but they felt boring. Ordinary. Nothing that would really show other species what made humans special. "Remember last summer at the rehabilitation center?" Nari asked suddenly. Jiho's eyes lit up. "With your mom? That was amazing." Dr. Soman had brought both children to the wildlife center during their school break. The facility cared for orphaned and injured animals from around the world. Nari and Jiho had spent 2 months helping feed babies, clean enclosures, and assist with treatments. "That's where we really learned about nature," Nari continued. "Not from books or pictures, but by actually taking care of wild animals." "The baby bears were so cute," Jiho remembered. "And those fox kits that followed you everywhere." Nari grinned. "What about Stripe and Spots?" Jiho almost dropped his tablet. "The tiger cubs?" "Nari, they're not exactly houseplants." "But they're babies," Nari argued. "Stripe is only 6 months old. He weighs 22 kilograms. That's smaller than some dogs. He's still a tiger." "A baby tiger," Nari corrected. "And he knows us. We bottle-fed him when he first arrived. He thinks we're his family." The tiger cubs had arrived at the center in terrible condition. Poachers had killed their mother, and the cubs were found starving and alone. Dr. Sumin had worked around the clock to save them, and both children had helped with the constant feeding schedule. Jiho was quiet for a long moment, thinking. What about Luna and Sol? Now it was Nari's turn to look surprised. Luna and Sul were Arctic wolf pups, orphaned when a landslide destroyed their pack. They had bonded strongly with Jiho during his time at the center. "They're wolves," Nari pointed out. "Baby wolves," Jiho said, using her own argument. 3 months old. They've never known any family except us." The two children looked at each other, both thinking the same thing. These weren't just animals they had helped care for. These were family members, creatures that trusted them completely and depended on them for survival. The council said safe. Nari said slowly, Stripe and Spots are totally safe with us. They've never shown any aggression. They play like kittens. Luna and Sol are the same way, Jiho agreed. They're pack animals and we're their pack. They would never hurt anyone we accept as family. We know how to handle them, Nari continued, getting more excited. We know their needs, their behavior, their personalities. If anyone can keep them safe around aliens, it's us. Plus, they need socialization, Jiho added. Dr. Summon said so. They need to be around different people and situations if they're going to be healthy adults. Both children began talking faster, building their case. The cubs and pups were orphans that needed human care. They were young enough to be manageable, but old enough to show their natural behaviors. Most importantly, they demonstrated something unique about humans: their ability to bond with and care for apex predators. No other species does this, Nari said with growing conviction. The files show that most aliens avoid their dangerous animals. We're the only ones who raise them like family. We should ask our parents, Jiho said, though his tone suggested he already knew what the answer would be. That evening, Nari approached her parents during dinner. She had prepared her arguments carefully, complete with research data on her tablet. Mom, Dad, I've been thinking about what to bring to the summit, she began innocently. The roses from hydroponics would be perfect, Dr. Soman suggested. They're beautiful and smell wonderful. Actually, I was thinking about Stripe and Spots, Nari said quickly. Taman nearly choked on his food. The tiger cubs? Nari, those are not houseplants. But they're perfect examples of human-animal relationships, Nari argued, pulling up her research. Look, they're only 6 months old. At this age, tiger cubs are naturally playful and social. They're not dangerous if properly cared for. They're still tigers, her father said firmly. Baby tigers, Nari corrected. And they know us. We raised them from when they were tiny. They trust us completely. Dr. Soman was looking thoughtful. As a veterinarian, she understood animal behavior better than most. Nari, even baby tigers are powerful animals. But Mom, you always say that understanding leads to safety. We understand Stripe and Spots better than anyone. We know when they're hungry, tired, playful, or stressed. We can predict their behavior. Meanwhile, on Captain Hayek's ship, Jiho was making his own case for Luna and Sol. Uncle wolves are pack animals, he explained seriously. They need their pack for emotional health. We're their pack now. Separating us would be cruel. Captain Hayek rubbed his forehead. He had dealt with space pirates, diplomatic crises, and equipment failures, but nothing had prepared him for his ward's determination. Jiho, the council specifically said safe. They are safe, Jiho insisted. With us, they've never shown any aggression toward humans. They're gentle and friendly. They're wolves. Baby wolves who think I'm their pack leader, Jiho corrected. And they need socialization with different people and environments. Both children had done their homework. They presented detailed care plans, behavior analyses, and safety protocols. They had researched interspecies interaction guidelines and transportation requirements. Most convincingly, they argued that no other choice would truly represent humanity's unique relationship with nature. Humans didn't just observe or cultivate nature. They formed family bonds with creatures that other species feared. By the time the diplomatic fleet reached the departure coordinates, both sets of parents had been worn down by persistent, logical arguments from determined 10 and 11-year-olds. Dr. Soman had prepared special transportation carriers with environmental controls. Captain Hyuk had requisitioned additional safety equipment. Both adults told themselves they were making a terrible mistake, but neither could find a flaw in their children's reasoning. As the ships prepared to jump to hyperspace toward Harmony Prime, 2 human children sat with their chosen companions, completely confident that they were bringing exactly what the Galactic Council had requested, something safe that represented humanity's relationship with nature. They just had a different definition of safe than everyone else expected. The first sight of Harmony Prime Station took everyone's breath away. The massive structure floated in the darkness of space like a small artificial planet, its multiple biodomes glowing with soft light from within. Each dome was designed to support different atmospheric conditions, connected by a network of transparent tunnels that allowed visitors to see the variety of environments. Nari pressed her face against the viewport of the human shuttle, watching the station grow larger as they approached. Behind her, Stripe made a small chirping sound from his travel carrier. The tiger cub was curious about the new sounds and smells around him. "It's beautiful," she whispered. On the adjacent shuttle, Jiho was equally impressed. Luna and Sol were restless in their carriers, sensing the excitement around them. The wolf pups had grown during the journey, though they were still small enough that Jiho could easily carry both carriers. "Look at all those ships." Captain Hayok pointed out the various vessels docked around the station. "I count at least 30 different designs. Each ship was unique, reflecting the biology and technology of its species. Some were smooth and organic-looking, like grown shells. Others were geometric and crystalline. A few seemed to be mostly energy fields containing living passengers. The human delegation was met by a tall, thin being with blue-gray skin and 4 arms. The translator identified him as Coordinator Jamel from the Cathara species. "Welcome, humans," Jamel said, his mandibles clicking in what the translator called a greeting gesture. "We have prepared atmospheric zones suitable for your biology. Please follow the marked paths to avoid incompatible environments." The docking bay was enormous, with different sections maintaining various atmospheric mixes. Nari could see groups of alien beings moving through their designated areas, many accompanied by young ones who must be the other youth delegates. "Where do we take our nature specimens?" Dr. Somin asked, gesturing toward the animal carriers. Coordinator Jamel's compound eyes focused on the containers. "Those will be examined by our safety teams before the opening ceremony." "What species have you brought?" "Native Earth mammals," Taman said carefully. "Young specimens fully domesticated and bonded to human handlers. They were led through a series of checkpoints and environmental barriers." Nari and Jiho stayed close to their animals' carriers, speaking softly to keep them calm. The cubs and pups could sense the new environment and were becoming excited. The main biodome was breathtaking. The ceiling stretched up so high it was lost in artificial clouds. Different climate zones blended together naturally, from tropical forest to Arctic tundra to shallow seas. Hundreds of beings moved through the space, each group staying within their comfortable atmospheric bubble. "Representatives will gather here in 4 hours for the opening ceremony," Jamel explained. "Each delegation will present their nature specimens for observation and educational interaction." They were shown to human quarters, which were surprisingly comfortable. The designers had clearly studied human preferences for private spaces and familiar colors. Each family had a small apartment with Earth-normal atmosphere and gravity. Nari immediately opened Stripe's carrier. The tiger cub stretched, yawned, and began exploring the new space. He was getting bigger every day, though he still moved with the clumsy playfulness of a kitten. His orange and black stripes were becoming more defined, and his green eyes held intelligence and curiosity. "How are you feeling, big guy?" Nari asked, scratching behind his ears. Stripe purred and rubbed against her legs, then walked over to investigate the viewport. In the next room, Jiho was releasing Luna and Sol. The wolf pups were darker gray now, their ears fully upright and their movements more coordinated. They immediately went to Jiho for reassurance, then began exploring their new environment together. "They know something different is happening," Captain Hayok observed. "Look how alert they are." Dr. Soman was checking both cubs and pups for stress signs. "Their vitals are good. A little excited, but that's normal. They trust their humans, so they're adapting well." Through their quarters viewport, they could see other delegations settling in. The crystalline Villani had grown beautiful mineral formations that sang soft harmonies. The aquatic Marins section was filled with glowing creatures that pulsed in patterns of blue and green light. "I wonder what the other kids are like," Nari said, watching a group of young beings with silvery skin playing some kind of game involving floating orbs. "We'll find out soon enough," Jiho replied, then grinned. "I can't wait to see their faces when they meet Luna and Sul." An hour before the ceremony, Coordinator Jamel returned with a security team. "We need to inspect your nature specimens now," he announced. Nari picked up Stripe, who had grown sleepy after exploring. The tiger cub settled comfortably in her arms, completely relaxed. Jiho called Luna and Sol, and both pups immediately came to his side. The security team consisted of 3 different species, each with scanning equipment. They began running their devices over the animals, recording biological data. "Interesting," one of the scanners said. "These readings show apex predator characteristics, but the stress hormones are extremely low." "That's because they're with family," Nari explained. Stripe has been with us since he was 2 months old. We're the only family he's ever known." The security team exchanged glances. "Family?" asked another scanner. "Social bonding between species is common among humans," Dr. Soman explained. "We form emotional connections with many types of animals. But these are dangerous species," the first scanner said, checking his readings again. "Natural hunters, predators. Not dangerous to us," Jiho said simply. "Luna and Sul are pack animals. We're their pack. They would never hurt pack members." The scanning continued for several more minutes. The security team seemed confused by what they found. Creatures with all the biological markers of dangerous predators, but displaying calm, social behavior patterns typical of domestic animals. "We will need to monitor these specimens closely during the presentation," the lead scanner finally decided. "Any sign of aggressive behavior and they will be removed immediately." "That's fine," Nari agreed. "But there won't be any problems. Stripe is very well behaved." As if to prove her point, the tiger cub yawned and closed his eyes, falling asleep in her arms like an oversized house cat. The security team left, but Nari and Jiho could see them conferring quietly outside their quarters. Through the viewport, they noticed other delegations were being visited by security teams as well, though those inspections seemed much shorter. "I think we might have surprised them," Taman said diplomatically. "Wait until the ceremony," Jiho grinned, gently petting Sol's head. "If they're surprised now, just wait until they see how we interact with our companions in front of everyone." As the time for the opening ceremony approached, both children made final preparations. They had practiced commands and behaviors with their animals for weeks. Everything was ready for humanity's first presentation at an interspecies youth gathering. Neither Nari nor Jiho realized that word was already spreading through the station about the humans who had brought young apex predators to a peace gathering. By the time they walked into the main biodome, representatives from 47 species would be watching their every move. The stage was set for a demonstration that would change how the galaxy viewed humanity forever. The main biodome of Harmony Prime buzzed with excitement as hundreds of beings gathered for the opening ceremony. Representatives from 47 different species filled the vast space, each group maintaining their atmospheric requirements within invisible environmental barriers. Counselor Vexth stood at the center of the presentation area, her crystalline form catching light from multiple sources and reflecting it in beautiful patterns. Her translator resonated with formal authority as she addressed the gathering. "Welcome, young beings of the galaxy," she began. "Today marks the first interspecies youth cultural exchange. Each delegation will present their chosen companion, demonstrating their people's relationship with the natural world." Nari and Jiho sat in the human section, watching the presentations begin. The ceremony was proceeding exactly as planned, peaceful, educational, and completely safe. The Villani youth went first, presenting crystalline formations that grew from their hands and sang in harmony. The audience responded with appropriate appreciation for the beautiful, harmless display. Next came the Marin delegation, their aquatic environment filled with bioluminescent creatures that created patterns of light in the water. Several young beings from other species pressed closer to the barrier to get a better look at the gentle light show. The pattern continued through a dozen presentations. Rainbow beetles from the Cathera, floating flower-like creatures from the gaseous beings of Nethys IV, small, furry animals that looked like living pom-poms from the Zarathi homeworld. Each presentation followed the same safe, predictable pattern, harmless creatures displaying beautiful or interesting behaviors, while young aliens observed from a respectful distance. The adult representatives nodded approvingly at these examples of responsible interspecies cultural sharing. "And now," Counselor Vexth announced, "we welcome the human delegation." Nari and Jiho stood up, each carrying a travel basket. They walked calmly to the presentation area, completely at ease in front of the massive audience. Both children had grown up around diplomats and formal events. "Hello, everyone," Nari said, her voice carrying clearly through the translator system. "I'm Nari and this is Jiho. We're from Earth and we're excited to share our companions with you." The audience settled in, expecting another routine presentation of harmless Earth creatures. Perhaps colorful birds or small mammals. Maybe an interesting plant or two. Nari set down her carrier and opened the door. "This is Stripe," she announced cheerfully. The tiger cub emerged slowly, taking in the enormous space and crowd of unfamiliar beings. At 6 months old, Stripe was no longer tiny, but he was still young enough to be curious rather than cautious. His orange and black striped coat gleamed under the dome's lighting, and his green eyes surveyed the audience with alert intelligence. A ripple of movement went through the alien observers. Even the youngest beings could recognize a predator when they saw one despite its age. Stripe stretched, displaying paws that were already impressively large and claws that caught the light. He made a small sound, not quite a roar, but definitely not a meow. The sound carried clearly through the dome's acoustics. He's only 6 months old, Nari continued, apparently oblivious to the growing tension in her audience. He weighs 22 kilograms now, but he'll get much bigger when he's an adult. Several alien delegates took involuntary steps backward. The Villani's crystalline forms were flickering rapidly, a clear sign of distress. The Marin representative's aquatic chamber began showing elevated readings on its environmental displays. Jiho opened his own carrier. "And these are Luna and Sul," he said proudly. 2 wolf pups emerged together, staying close to Jiho's legs. At 3 months old, they were still small, but their pointed ears, sharp teeth, and amber eyes marked them clearly as predators. Luna was slightly larger than Sul, with darker markings around her eyes that made her look even more wild. Both pups immediately went to Jiho for reassurance, then began investigating this new environment. Their noses worked constantly, processing the thousands of new scents in the dome. The audience was now openly backing away. What had started as a peaceful educational gathering was turning into something none of them had expected. Young beings from multiple species sought protection behind their adult guardians. "These are wolves," Sul howled softly, responding to some scent or sound only he could detect. Luna joined him, their voices harmonizing in a way that made the dome's artificial atmosphere seem suddenly wild and dangerous. "Counselor," Vexith's crystalline form was flashing in rapid patterns that indicated extreme agitation. "Humans," her translator crackled with static. "Those are apex predators." Nari looked up at the towering crystalline being with genuine confusion. "Well, yes," she agreed reasonably, "but they're babies." The simplicity of her response seemed to make the situation even more surreal. Here was a 10-year-old human child standing calmly in front of hundreds of alien beings, holding what was essentially a young killing machine, and acting like this was the most normal thing in the world. "Stripe was orphaned when poachers killed his mother," Nari explained, settling cross-legged on the floor. Stripe immediately came to her and settled beside her, purring loudly enough for the dome's acoustics to carry the sound to the entire audience. "We've been taking care of him since he was 8 weeks old." She began gently stroking the tiger cub's head, and Stripe closed his eyes in contentment. To the watching aliens, it looked like the human child was calmly petting a creature that could theoretically kill her. Jiho sat down as well, and Luna and Sul immediately positioned themselves on either side of him. "Their pack was killed in a landslide," he added. "They would have died alone in the wilderness. Now we're their pack family." "Pack family," Counselor Vexith repeated, her translator struggling with the concept. "Humans form social bonds with other species," Dr. Soman explained from the audience. "It's a common practice on our world. We call it adoption or domestication depending on the circumstances." "But these are dangerous creatures," protested another council member, a tall being with multiple tentacles. "Natural hunters. Born killers. Not to us," Nari said simply. She demonstrated by gently opening Stripe's mouth, showing his developing fangs. The tiger cub allowed this handling without any sign of stress or aggression. "See? He trusts us completely." Jiho was demonstrating pack behavior with Luna and Sul. When he moved, both pups followed. When he sat, they sat. When he made a specific hand gesture, both pups lay down immediately. "They recognize human pack authority," he explained. "We're not just their caretakers. We're family." The silence in the dome was profound. Hundreds of beings from dozens of species watched 2 human children interact fearlessly with creatures that represented their species' greatest fears. Apex predators. Hunters, killers. Yet what they saw defied all logic. The predators were calm, affectionate, and completely controlled. More than that, they clearly loved their human companions. Stripe was purring so loudly that several species with sensitive hearing were adjusting their audio receptors. Luna and Sul kept looking up at Jiho with obvious adoration. "This is impossible. whispered one of the Kithera delegates. Predators don't form emotional bonds with prey species. We're not prey, Nari corrected, overhearing through the translator system. We're family. As if to prove her point, Stripe rolled onto his back, exposing his vulnerable belly for Nari to scratch. It was the ultimate display of trust from a predator, and Nari responded with gentle belly rubs like he was an oversized house cat. The audience watched in stunned silence as everything they thought they knew about predator-prey relationships was turned upside down by two human children and their impossible companions. The silence stretched for nearly a full minute before Counselor Vexeth found her voice again. Her crystalline form was still flashing in rapid, agitated patterns as she processed what she was seeing. The dangerous specimens must be removed immediately, she announced, her translator crackling with authority. This gathering is meant to be safe and educational, not a display of reckless endangerment. But we're being educational, Nari protested, looking genuinely confused. We're showing you how humans bond with apex predators. This is exactly what you asked for. Our relationship with nature. Your relationship with nature should not include creatures that can kill you, another council member interjected. This one was a flowing, gaseous being whose form rippled with distress. Jiho looked up from where he was sitting with Luna and Sol. But that's what makes it special, he said with the kind of logic that only children possess. Anyone can be friends with something harmless. It takes real trust and understanding to be family with a predator. The alien youth in the audience were beginning to show interest despite their initial fear. Several young beings had crept closer to the environmental barriers, trying to get a better look at the impossible scene before them. They're actually kind of cute, whispered a young Kithera. Her compound eyes focused on Stripe's playful behavior. The small ones make interesting sounds, added a Marin youth, referring to Luna and Sol's soft vocalizations. But the adult representatives were far from convinced. A delegation of Villani approached the council area, their crystalline forms harmonizing in urgent tones. This violates every safety protocol, their spokesperson declared. These humans have brought weapons to a peace gathering. They're not weapons, Nari said firmly, her voice carrying the kind of moral authority that only children can wield. They're babies. Stripe can't even hunt yet. Watch. She picked up a small toy from her supply bag, a colorful ball with bells inside. When she rolled it across the floor, Stripe immediately pounced on it, batting at it with his paws and wrestling with it like any kitten might. See? He plays with toys. He sleeps in a bed. He gets scared during thunderstorms and comes to me for comfort. The behavioral patterns are confusing our sensors, one of the security team admitted quietly to Counselor Vexeth. These creatures display all the biological markers of apex predators, but their stress hormones are at domesticated animal levels. Dr. Yuki, the human xenobiologist, stepped forward from the audience. Perhaps I can explain the scientific basis for what you're observing, she offered. Please, Vexth said, still flashing agitated patterns. We need to understand how this is possible. Human children regularly form bonds with apex predators on our world, Dr. Yuki began. We call it interspecies adoption. When young predators are orphaned, humans often raise them as family members. The gaseous council member rippled with disbelief. That sounds like madness. Not madness, evolution, Dr. Yuki corrected. Humans developed alongside numerous predator species. Instead of simply avoiding them, we learn to understand them, predict their behavior, and eventually form cooperative relationships. She gestured toward Nari and Stripe. What you're seeing is the result of thousands of years of human-animal cooperation. These children understand tiger and wolf behavior better than most adults, understand members of their own species. But the danger, protested the Villani representative, is managed through knowledge and trust, Dr. Yuki explained. Nari knows exactly when Stripe is hungry, tired, playful, or stressed. She can predict his reactions to new situations because she understands his natural behaviors. As if to demonstrate, Stripe suddenly became alert, his ears pricking forward. Nari immediately noticed the change. He hears something interesting, she told the audience. Probably one of the other animals from another delegation. He's curious. Not aggressive. Sure enough, a moment later, the rainbow beetles from the Kithera presentation began their chirping song, and Stripe's head turned toward the sound with obvious fascination. You see? Nari said. He's just investigating. If he was scared or angry, his ears would be flat and his tail would be twitching. Several alien youth were now pressing against their environmental barriers, trying to get closer. The scientific curiosity that drove young minds across all species was overcoming their initial fear. "Can I ask a question?" called out a young Zarathi, her fuzzy form bouncing with excitement. "Of course," Jiho replied, gently scratching behind Sol's ears. "How do they know you're not going to hurt them?" the young alien asked. "Because we never have," Jiho answered simply. "Luna and Sol have known me since they were a month old. I fed them bottles when they were too young to eat solid food. I played with them when they needed exercise. I stayed with them when they were sick or scared. We earned their trust by taking care of them," Nari added. "And they earned our trust by never using their teeth or claws on us, even when they were playing." A young Marin raised a tentacle. "What happens when they get bigger?" "Stripe will go to a preserve where he can live with other tigers," Nari explained. "But he'll always remember us as family. When we visit, he'll recognize our scent and come to see us. Luna and Sol might stay with us longer," Jiho said. "Wolves can live with human families their whole lives if they want to. It depends on what makes them happy." The questions continued for over an hour. Young beings from dozens of species wanted to know about feeding schedules, play behavior, sleeping arrangements, and training methods. They were fascinated by the idea that predators could be family members rather than threats. The adult representatives remained nervous, but they couldn't deny what they were observing. The human children displayed a level of animal knowledge and behavioral understanding that impressed even the galaxy's leading xenobiologists. "This is unprecedented," Counselor Vexth finally admitted. "We have no records of any species forming this type of relationship with natural predators." "That's because we're different," Nari said matter-of-factly. "Humans don't just live alongside nature. We make nature part of our families. Even the dangerous parts," Jiho added as Luna and Sol dozed peacefully beside him. As the formal presentation period ended, something remarkable began to happen. Young beings from other species started asking if they could meet the human companions more closely. They wanted to understand how creatures that looked so fearsome could behave so gently. The first volunteer was a young Kithara named Zira, whose compound eyes sparkled with scientific curiosity. With careful supervision and translation, Nari showed her how to let Stripe sniff her hand before attempting any contact. When Stripe nuzzled Zira's palm with his large head, the young insectoid's excitement was visible in the rapid flickering of her antennae. "His fur is so soft," she reported to her watching peers, "and he's making that rumbling sound again." "That's purring," Nari explained. "It means he's happy and comfortable." Word spread quickly through the station that the human children were offering supervised interactions with their impossible companions. What had started as a diplomatic crisis was turning into the most popular educational experience in Galactic Council history. For the first time, young beings from across the galaxy were learning that predators didn't have to be feared. They could be understood, respected, and even loved. 3 days into the cultural exchange, Harmony Prime Station had transformed from a formal diplomatic gathering into something unprecedented in galactic history. Word of the human children and their apex predator companions had spread throughout the facility, drawing curious young beings from every delegation. The main biodome had been reconfigured with special interaction areas where supervised meetings could take place. Nari and Jiho found themselves at the center of the most popular activities, surrounded by alien youth eager to learn about their unusual family members. "Remember, let him sniff your hand first," Nari instructed Kellum, a young Marin, whose aquatic suit allowed him to participate in air-breathing activities for short periods. "Stripe needs to know you're friendly before he'll let you pet him." The tiger cub, now completely comfortable with the strange environment and multiple species, approached Kellum's extended hand with curious interest. After a brief investigation, Stripe rubbed his head against the young Marin's palm, purring loudly. "The vibrations are incredible," Kellum reported to his watching friends through his suit's translator. "It's like he's singing with his whole body." Nearby, Jiho was demonstrating pack behavior with Luna and Sol for a group of fascinated Kithara youth. The wolf pups had grown visibly during their stay on the station, but they remained perfectly obedient to Jiho's commands. "Watch this," Jiho said, making a subtle hand gesture. Both pups immediately lay down and stayed still, Even when curious young aliens moved around them, they understand that I'm the pack leader, so they follow my instructions about what's safe and what isn't. But how do they know the difference between pack members and strangers? Asked Zira, the young Kythera who had been the first to volunteer for close contact. They watch my reactions, Jiho explained. If I'm calm and friendly with someone, they know that person is safe. If I'm tense or worried, they become protective. The educational sessions had evolved far beyond simple animal interactions. The alien youth were learning about human approaches to conservation, wildlife rehabilitation, and interspecies communication. More importantly, they were discovering that their galaxy's most feared creatures could be gentle, loyal, and loving under the right circumstances. Dr. Yuki had established formal observation sessions where young beings could ask scientific questions about predator behavior and human bonding techniques. These had become so popular that attendance had to be limited to prevent overcrowding. The key insight, she explained to a mixed group of young scientists from 12 different species, is that humans don't see predators as inherently dangerous. We see them as complex beings with their own needs, emotions, and capacity for relationships, a young Villani crystalline being chimed a question through harmonics. But surely there must be failures. Incidents where the predators harm humans, of course, Dr. Yuki admitted, but those incidents are usually the result of misunderstanding or neglect, not natural aggression. When humans properly understand an animal's needs and signals, successful relationships are very common. She gestured toward where Nari was teaching a young gaseous being from Nethys 4 how to recognize Stripe's different vocalizations. Nari can tell from Stripe's body language whether he's hungry, sleepy, playful, or just wants attention. This level of understanding prevents problems before they occur. The breakthrough moment came on the 4th day when young Teku, a normally shy Zorathi, approached Jiho with an unusual request. "Could you teach me pack signals?" the fuzzy alien asked hesitantly. "Not with Luna and Sol, but with other Zorathi? We have social structures too, but we never learned to communicate them clearly." Jiho's face lit up with understanding. Pack behavior isn't just about wolves, he realized. It's about understanding social signals and group dynamics. Within hours, Jiho was leading workshops on leadership communication and social bonding that drew participants from dozens of species. His experience reading wolf pack behavior translated remarkably well to helping young aliens understand their own social structures. Similarly, Nari's knowledge of predator body language proved invaluable in teaching conflict resolution. Her ability to recognize stress signals and de-escalation behaviors helped resolve several minor disputes between young beings from different species. "It's the same principles," she explained to Counselor Vexith during an impromptu consultation. "When Stripe is getting overwhelmed, he shows specific warning signs before he gets aggressive. Most conflicts work the same way. There are always signals before things get serious." The adult representatives were taking notice. What had begun as a potential diplomatic crisis was turning into the most successful interspecies youth program in Council history. Young beings who had been hesitant to interact across species barriers were now forming friendships and collaborative study groups. "The humans have given our youth something we never expected," observed Coordinator Jamel during a private council meeting. "Not just tolerance for differences, but genuine curiosity about them." The change was visible throughout the station. Mixed species groups gathered around Stripe's nap area, watching the tiger cubs sleep and discussing their own species' rest behaviors. Young beings from different worlds worked together to design enrichment activities for Luna and Sol, learning about each other's problem-solving approaches in the process. Even the adult representatives began attending the educational sessions. Ambassador Taman found himself explaining human-wildlife conservation efforts to fascinated council members who had never considered the possibility of deliberately preserving dangerous species. "On Earth, we maintain protected areas specifically for apex predators," he told a gathering of senior diplomats. "We believe that ecosystems need their natural hunters to remain healthy. But the risk to your populations," protested a Villani elder, "is managed through understanding and respect," Dr. Soman interjected. "We don't eliminate risk. We learn to live with it safely." The final presentation ceremony arrived sooner than anyone wanted. The past week had been so successful that many delegations requested extensions to their stays. Young beings who had arrived as strangers were leaving as friends and research partners. Counselor Vex called for attention as the various species gathered one final time in the main biodome. Her crystalline form was now pulsing with steady, calm patterns instead of the agitated flashing from the first day. "This cultural exchange has exceeded all expectations," she announced. "We have learned that safety does not require the absence of danger, but rather the presence of understanding." She turned toward the human delegation. "The humans have taught us that their species' greatest strength is not their technology or their intelligence, but their remarkable ability to find family connections with the most unlikely companions." Nari and Jiho stood with their companions one final time. Stripe had grown noticeably during the week, and Luna and Sol were beginning to show the longer legs and broader heads of their adult forms. But their bonds with their human family remained unchanged. "We want to thank everyone for welcoming our family," Nari said, her voice carrying clearly through the dome. "Stripe, Luna, and Sol have loved meeting all of you." As if on cue, Stripe let out a small roar, not threatening but proud and confident. Luna and Sol howled in harmony, their voices echoing through the biodome in a sound that no longer seemed frightening, but rather like a song of friendship. The alien youth responded with their own species' expressions of appreciation. Crystalline chimes, bioluminescent pulses, harmonic vibrations, and dozens of other forms of communication created a symphony of interspecies friendship. "This will not be the last such gathering," Vexith announced. "The Council has voted to establish regular youth exchanges, with expanded programs for interspecies understanding." As the delegations prepared to depart, something remarkable happened. Young beings from multiple species approached Nari and Jiho with requests to stay in contact, to share research, and to continue learning about different approaches to nature and relationships. "We've never seen anything like this," Captain Yak admitted to Ambassador Taman as they watched Jiho saying goodbye to his new friends. "These kids have accomplished more for interspecies relations in 1 week than most diplomatic missions achieve in years. They had the right teachers," Taman replied, watching Nari give final instructions to a young Kithara about tiger care techniques. Stripe, Luna, and Sol taught them that family comes in all forms. The journey home was bittersweet. Nari and Jiho were excited to return to Earth, but sad to leave their new friends. Their animal companions sensed the change in routine and stayed close to their humans for comfort. "Do you think we'll see them again?" Nari asked, looking back at Harmony Prime through the shuttle's viewport. "I'm sure we will," Jiho replied confidently. "We started something important here." 6 months later, the first follow-up exchange took place on Earth itself. Young beings from a dozen species came to visit human wildlife centers, conservation areas, and rehabilitation facilities. They met elephants, dolphins, eagles, and dozens of other Earth species, learning that humans formed bonds with creatures throughout their ecosystem, not just apex predators. The program grew into the Galactic Wildlife Understanding Initiative, with Earth serving as the primary training center for interspecies animal communication and conservation tech.